In at 5, Prom Night. This film is just an insult. 10 years later and I'm still personally offended by the mess of a slasher. We didn't ask for it and we did not deserve it. To backtrack, the original is a 1980s masterpiece starring the queen of slashers Jamie Lee Curtis. It's bloody and exciting. However, the remake falls short right off the bat by opting for a PG-13 rating. Excuse me. The film centers on Donna, aka Brittany Snow, aka the most bland and uninteresting actress that has the range of a sloth, but no offense. After her high school teacher murders her entire family, cause love, he's sent to prison, but of course he escapes because prison is easy. And he hunts Donna and all her friends down one by one. I've slated it, I know, but it does have one redeeming factor, the beautiful Idris Elba, who did not deserve to ever star in this mess. Poor guy. Hashtag my James Bond. In at 4, The Wicker Man. Now the original 1973 Wicker Man is a cult classic and an absolute gem in British horror history, so why have a remake and why cast Nicolas Cage in the title role? I have so many questions. So, as most of us know, The Wicker Man is about a detective who must venture to an isolated island in order to investigate the disappearance of his ex-fiance's daughter. He quickly discovers that she is being used in a ritual being held by the island's female cult. Fun plot, great times. However, the execution was atrocious. There were too many elements and it seems confused as to what genre it is trying to exist in. Psychological thriller, mystery, horror, redemption story. I'm just as confused as everyone else. The film has its flaws, yes, but I think we can all agree that the performance Nicolas Cage gave was nothing short of extraordinary. I mean, just take a look.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes!
In at 3, Texas Chainsaw 3D. After a handful of unsuccessful remakes, execs should be wise enough to not touch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre ever again. Please, stop inflicting pain on us. Now let me just briefly explain the premise of the film to you. The film follows the events of the original film. The people of Newt, Texas burned down the farmhouse of the Sawyer clan in an act of justice, killing the entire clan. However, an infant is found, Edith Rose Sawyer. Years later, Heather discovers she was adopted, and her and a few friends travel to Newt to collect her inheritance. Can you guys guess where this is going? Other shit goes down, and as the ending nears, we learn through a birthmark that Heather is a part of the Sawyer clan, aka she is Edith and Leatherface is her cousin. It's weird, it's all really weird. The film was such a failure, it received 19% on Rotten Tomatoes and 3.4 out of 10 on IMDb. IGN editor Eric Goldman wrote, "A few fun 3D aided jump scares aside, Texas Chainsaw 3D is a generic and laughable attempt to follow the original." Cutting. In at 2, Amityville Horror. In 2005, the remake to a horror classic, The Amityville Horror, was released. The story follows the Lutz family, a young couple with 2 kids who move into a new home in Amityville, New York. But as always, the place is too good to be true. They soon learn of the house's sordid history and the man that murdered his entire family after becoming possessed by an evil entity. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Ryan Reynolds, who was completely miscast for this film, horror clearly is not his thing. In my opinion, Melissa George is the one saving grace of this wannabe slick remake that concocts a bizarre history to a haunted house that the original so subtly explores. Also, watching this now, I just can't get past seeing Deadpool and Hit Girl together in a film. Okay, so let's count down some of the worst things this movie has to offer. To start, during a Ryan Reynolds Melissa George sex scene, having a child in the room is not something anyone wants, even if that child is a ghost. There are about 50 pointless jump scares, making this film even less scary than it already was. Also, Ryan Reynolds is shirtless for about 90% of this film. Not a criticism, just an observation. In at number 1, A Nightmare on Elm Street. In 2010, one of the horror genre's best and most adored films suffered a nightmarish remake. As we know, the 1984 version focuses on a group of teens hunted by a scarred killer wielding finger knives, slaying them in their dreams in the most horrific ways. Freddy Krueger is an icon. Sadly though, the 2010 remake did not do this icon killer any justice. Firstly, it was produced by Michael Bay, which, as we all know, is the biggest red flag. But secondly, the cast was stacked, with stars such as Academy Award nominee Rooney Mara, Connie Britton, and Katie Cassidy. I mean, the latter is subpar at best, but I'm a fan, so let me have that. The film itself was a sales movie. Let's face it relied on classic horror movie tropes, instead of hashing out new mythology surrounding Freddy Krueger. The intentions were there, the pioneers behind it were hoping to draw on the themes of child sexual abuse, exploring the darker elements of the killer that had yet to be explored. But when they put that film in front of thousands of moviegoers, it likely wasn't going to land, so of course they shied away from it, preferring to play it safe with the same overused themes the original had to offer, refusing to draw on Freddy's history and what truly led him to the demonic life he leads. According to the OG Freddy, Robert Englund, the opening was reshot, and instead of allowing us to see the happy lives of a group of teens, we saw only their tainted souls and the demons they harbour because of Freddy. As Englund put it, I think this was a miscalculation. You need to see before and after so you can invest emotionally with the children. Englund truly hits the nail on the head. If we don't care for the characters from the get-go, then why should we care for them when they're killed off? Personally, I was not a fan of this film, but let me know down below your thoughts on it.
At number 5, The Hitcher, 2007. Bay, am I right? Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm a massive fan of Sean Bean. No one can pull off a death scene better than the main man himself. But when you compare his John Ryder to that of Rutger Hauer's, it's not even the same sport. The 2007 remake, directed by Dave Meyers and produced by Michael Bay, is so far away from the 1986 original that it's not even funny. Now, I'm all for taking different spins on horror classics, but when you completely rewrite its DNA, you fail to get the point of pastiche. And what does Michael Bay do? He sticks a bazillion helicopters and automatic rifles into a high-speed chase scene and makes the whole thing go boom. The saddest thing about 2007's The Hitcher is that it's just straight up boring. For a film with such a simple pretext, creepy man stalks guy on lonely highway, David Meyers really makes a point of falling asleep at the wheel. And what do we get as a result of that in a futile attempt to try and wake us up? Just straight up pointless gore, cheap tricks, shock tactics, and a failure to even understand the subtle charm of the 1986 original. 2 thumbs down. Coming in at number 4, The Omen, 2006. And I still find it hilarious that literally the only reason that this film came into existence was because someone realised they could make a shed ton of money if they released an Omen film on the 6th of June 2006. And I actually paid money to see this film, and there was a Catholic priest at the screening. The whole thing was just a massive cash grab for what was essentially an elaborate marketing campaign. I mean, you can't blame them. I can't complain. I paid money. Geez, what a terrible movie. And really, the question we should really be asking, how do you take a movie about the literal spawn of Satan and somehow make it boring? Richard Donner's 1976 slow-burning thriller is perhaps one of the greatest horror movies of all time, building itself up with an eerie sense of dread, crawling through the dilemma of whether or not to kill an evil child. The original is brilliant because we were always questioning maybe, just maybe, this Damien kid isn't the son of Lucifer after all, and Gregory Peck's character is potentially going crazy. Yep, none of that in the 2006 film, just a creepy looking kid on a scooter. Nothing to see here. Next up at number 3, The Thing, 2011. Alright, I'll admit it guys, this one is a personal bias. It's a grudge match, and if I'm being truly fair, this film never fully pledged itself as a remake but intended to be a prequel. Well, in that case, call it something else. In all fairness, John Carpenter's 1982 masterpiece is a remake in itself of 1951's The Thing from Another World, but you know, let's be honest, there's only one movie called The Thing. And sadly, it's not this one. By far though, this is the best film on this list, and it's got some real talent attached to it, but sadly, it doesn't live up in any shape or form to its namesake, and as my man Omar Little said in The Wire, you come at the king, you best not miss. For a film that is intended to be the pastiche of a slow-burning, claustrophobic whodunit, this entire movie is shot in wide. Also, for a story that features a bunch of colleagues who've been trapped in an Arctic way station for supposedly months on end, these guys act like they've just met each other. Also, the CGI just straight up sucks. I'll admit it, I'm being a bit of a snob in this one, but I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Swinging in at number 2, Poltergeist, 2015. And it's just getting worse guys. This film was so sad. It was unnecessary, nobody wanted it, nobody asked for it. Just because Paranormal Activity was a success doesn't mean you have to butcher a classic. And again, which you may begin to pick up as a theme in this list, it was just straight up boring. Play that clip back again, listen to how empty it is, just pure nothingness. and not in a good way. That's the whole film. I'm not even kidding. Oh, and of course they just had to release it in 3D too, because apparently everyone wanted that. Alright, please don't get me wrong, I love Sam Rockwell, and his performance in this film was stellar. You could tell that he was trying to add some form of life to it with every fibre of his being, but it just fell on deaf ears. I'm pretty sure that no one wanted to remake this movie, but it happened anyway. And what we're left with is a forgettable, cheap, throwaway version of an absolute horror classic. And finally, at our #1 spot, Day of the Dead, 2008. I wish I had some bleach to pour into my eyes after watching this film. That's exactly how it felt, those annoyed, panic screams. Straight up guys, 2008's Day of the Dead is a terrible movie. You want to know how little anyone cared about making this movie? Mina Suvaris' character, that she's referred to the whole time throughout the film, is listed as a completely different name in the closing credits. The main character. Yeah, no one cared to change it. If that's not revealing, I don't know what is. George Romero is to zombie horror as Odin is to beer and ale. It's a sad state of affairs that an entire studio took his 1985 zombie tour de force and thought it'd be a great idea to write off his name and create a steaming pile of poorly CGI'd organs. It doesn't even fall in the realm of so bad it's good, it's just freaking terrible. Nobody at no point sat down and read this script and said out loud, you know what, this is going to be a great zombie movie that gives a nice subtle nod to George Romero's passion for horror, and we're going to do the best of our ability to create that. Nah. They just said brains, zombies, money. And well, it didn't even make any money. Don't watch it, save yourself 86 minutes of your life.
In at 5, Cabin Fever. Eli Roth's 2002 Cabin Fever is excellent. It follows 5 college graduates on a trip to the woods who fall victim to a truly disgusting flesh-eating virus. Seriously, if you haven't watched it, go do that now. One particular scene still haunts me to this day. A girl in the bathtub shaving her legs. It's not just hair that comes off. Nope. Her skin does as well. Horrible. So, with any successful film, Hollywood execs of course feel obliged to remake it, and that's exactly what happened in 2016. Didn't hear about it? Well yeah, there's a reason for that. Not only did it receive a very generous 3.7 on IMDb, but it also received a more fitting 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating here, the film is atrocious. Follows the exact same premise as the original. Not only that, but it's essentially the exact same thing, aside from the fact that it's bad. The acting feels more like a table read with understudy actors who weren't prepared to star in a Hollywood film. The film in essence is pointless. Why remake a film when you're gonna steal every possible move from the original? It makes no sense. Feels as though you're stuck in a swamp for 2 hours waiting for some sort of mediocre plot to take place. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. In at 4, Black Christmas. Now the 1974 Black Christmas is no masterpiece by any stretch, following a group of sorority girls as they're stalked by a killer during Christmas break. However, it did push the boundaries of horror for a film released in the 70s, featured a phenomenal final girl who was not punished by death for wanting to have an abortion. Pretty damn great in my opinion. But the remake is just downright baffling. First of all, let me just list off the cast. Katie Cassidy, a wannabe actress whose name gets her most places. Michelle Trachtenberg, who is essentially her Buffy character in anything she does. Our Lord and Savior Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I refuse to judge her for this train wreck, she has more than redeemed herself. Lacey Chabot, aka That's Why Her Hair Is So Big, It's Full of Secrets, and Oliver Hudson, the lesser known brother of Kate Hudson. The cast alone makes me want to give this film 2 out of 10, but let's continue. The film gives the killer a tragic backstory, so we are forced to sympathize with his murderous motives. He lives in the attic and suffers from jaundice. Not only that, but he was abused by a number of different people in his past. Sad? Yes. But not sad enough for me to feel sorry for a homicidal maniac who preys on young girls. The beauty of the original was that we never saw the face of the killer, we only ever heard his name whispered. Sometimes not seeing is way more effective. In at 3, When a Stranger Calls. Okay, to begin, can we all stop pretending that Camilla Bell can act? She can't. It's painful. She was in one good film, Practical Magic, and that was when she was about 10 years old. So please let's stop casting her in bad movie remakes. Released in 2006, this American horror was directed by Simon West and centers on Belle, who plays a babysitter who begins to receive disturbing and threatening phone calls from a stranger. Now the original is great, really great, and pushes things to an extreme that you were not quite prepared for, aka killing off the children at the end of the film. However, the remake, well, as we would expect, it plays it safe. First of all, the entire film is far too stretched out, even for a film that is only an hour and 27 minutes long. Seriously, the phone calls become monotonous, Camilla Bell is the worst victim, and the kids, well, they don't even die. Honestly, what's the point? In at 2, The Haunting. Now, you might know this film better by its book title, The Haunting of Hill House. And no, the Netflix TV show we all know and love is nothing like the book, original film, or remake. It's better. Now, I will say the original 1963 Haunting is by far one of the scariest films I've ever seen. It follows a scientist doing research on the paranormal in the now iconic Hill House, inviting 2 women to partake in his experiment, Eleanor Vance and Theodora, the former losing her mind in the process and tragically ending her life in the final climactic moment of both the book and film. In 1999, a remake of the psychological horror was released, starring none other than Catherine Zeta-Jones. Unlike the original, the remake overloads itself with jump scares, special effects, and loud, unnecessary sound cues. I will say the one consistent theme that the remake held on to was the subtle gay vibes between Nell and Theo. I was a fan. Unfortunately, the TV show ruined that for all of us because they were now sisters. What a waste. Also, Nell's dead, so I guess nothing was ever gonna happen. Now, even if the remake played with the subtleties the original mastered so well, it still would have been a train wreck. No part of the film was scary, especially not the CGI ghost jumping out of a painting. The film closer to an action movie than a horror, perhaps because the director also made the film Speed starring Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. All in all, the film was ill-equipped and too reliant on special effects to even touch the beauty of the original. And finally, in at number 1, The Fog. First things first, stop remaking John Carpenter films. Just don't do it. Honestly, his films are iconic, terrifying, and arguably some of the best things to come out of cinema, so why do his masterpieces the disservice of remaking them and casting Superman in the title role? Not even the good Superman, the Smallville one. Carpenter's 1980s cult classic is an incredibly spooky ghost story starring Jamie Lee Curtis, and if you don't already know, it centers on an otherworldly fog that descends on a coastal town 100 years after a ghostly ship sank in its waters. Creepy. Carpenter himself wasn't even a fan of his own film, but over time it has grown into a cult classic it is today. So, as you can imagine, when the remake hit theaters in 2005, folks weren't all too pleased. As I stated before, Tom Welling, aka Superman, nabbed the title role. How? Well, that's beyond me. He's as wooden as Orlando Bloom in Lord of the Rings, and I can honestly say the only films he should be making are more sequels to Cheaper by the Dozen. I miss them. Like our previous numbers, the remake relies on CGI rather than the practical effects that made the originals that much more creepy, and like most early 2000 movies, the entire cast looked as though they were still sitting their high school exams. Hollywood, seriously. This is not believable. High school students aren't going to save the day, they're inside playing video games. Get with the times. And more importantly, how hard is it to tell the story of pirate ghosts emerging out of the fog to seek vengeance? It's not that hard.